Hi there and welcome back to Planet Property. As you can see, today we are in a different location. This is my bedroom. Welcome to my boudoir. No, in all seriousness, the spare bedroom, which is where I usually work and film these videos, it's too embarrassing to have on camera at the moment. I recently got back from a week in the Canary Islands and that coincided with Tom moving to Scotland for a month. Plus I had my massive spring, summer to autumn, winter wardrobe clear out and reshuffle, and there is just stuff everywhere. I really need to clear it before my 9 o'clock meeting tomorrow morning, but that's a job for later on. And I am just chatting about absolute nonsense of things that people don't care about. But that's why we're in my bedroom, and it's nice to change things up every so often anyway. As you can see, I've got my candle burning. It is October. We are fully into the autumn season. It's beautiful, crisp morning air out, although disappointingly the tree, I'm looking outside at my neighbour's tree and the tree leaves still aren't turning, but you know what, can't complain too much for living in tropical Sussex. So first of all, I want to say a huge thank you to everyone that has subscribed. It absolutely blows my mind that people even subscribe to this channel and listen to my ramblings about nonsense and whinging about the APC process and things like that. I never even thought about it when I started making these videos. I was largely doing it to document myself, to keep on track, and also if there was just 1 or 2 people who stumbled across it and could benefit from it, then that was all that I wanted out of this. And there are now 100 subscribers, which, like I say, blows my mind. It's mad to me that many people actually care enough about what I'm saying to want to come back for each video. And I am getting quite a lot of messages on my Instagram page from people who come across this channel and want to ask me questions or want to know a bit more about the APC process or more about the day-to-day life of being a chartered town planner and a trainee surveyor. So I thought for this 100 subscriber special, I feel like you know when the Simpsons did that 300 episode and everything kind of just went downhill from there. I feel like that's what this is going to be like. Hopefully not. I thought for this video I would address something that I've been asked quite a few times in my DMs on Instagram actually, which is how to go about becoming a chartered town planner. So for those of you who don't know, I am actually a town planner by trade. That is my job title. I spend most of my day doing planning things. I can go into more depth in another video of my actual day-to-day, what my role entails each day. I do have a video, which I'm going to link down below, of an average day in my life, although I really, in hindsight, that was not average at all. I think I was like 2 weeks into my job or something, so things were not as they are now. But to get the role that I currently have and to get any kind of role above a graduate level, certainly within a private sector job role or a consultancy role, or kind of most roles outside of a council role as a town planner, really you need to be chartered with the Royal Town Planning Institute. So I thought I would talk you through how I got mine and how you can go about it and the processes and all of that good stuff in this video. So what is the RTPI? It's similar to the RICS APC in that they also call it an APC, an Assessment of Professional Competence, and it's something that you do about 2 years into your career to show that you have gained enough experience to become a chartered member of the Royal Town Planning Institute. And it is similar to the RICS APC in that you have to submit written evidence of your competency and you have to submit case studies, but unlike the RICS, you don't have to sit an interview, which I think kind of has pros and cons to it. The RICS final interview is horrible and there's no getting around that, but it's also a really good opportunity if, like me, perhaps you're not best at articulating yourself on paper or in words and you're better at speaking in person. I mean, look at me now, look at how much I talk with my hands and I talk to people. I articulate much better in person, and I always have. So there are definite pros and cons to final assessment interview, whereas with the RTPI, you only have that piece of paper to prove yourself to them. So there are 4 submission windows a year, normally 1 per season, sort of like January, April, July and November, I think they are. And you have to submit, I'm gonna have to remember this now. We should have looked this up before I started recording this. Okay, this is really embarrassing because I only did my RTPI 18 months ago and I've already forgotten everything about it because the APC has been so all consuming. So I've just been looking it up now to remind myself. But it consists of 3 main documents and a logbook. So there is the professional experience statement, the professional competency statement, and the professional development plan. Now, your PES, professional experience statement, that's essentially a really padded out CV. That's where you go into detail about each of the jobs you've had, the kind of work you've been doing, and just show that you've been working in a planning related role for the amount of time you say you have. Your professional competence statement is where you're tested on your professional competencies, as the name suggests. And you can use up to 3, but most people use 2 case studies to demonstrate this. And you have to weave the competencies into the case study whilst you're writing it. So this is where I think it can be harder than the APC, because you are sort of having to prove within your writing that you are competent and you can do it just based on the experience that you have. And the professional development plan is essentially your 5-year professional plan of where you want to be, what you want to do over the next few years. So you submit all of these documents and they get assessed and you come back with either a pass or a referral. And that is it, essentially. So just breaking it down, I was just having a look on the RTPI website to remind myself. Now, when I sat the RTPI, I submitted my written submission in February 2020, one of the last things I did before COVID hit. And I found out I'd passed 2 days before we went into national lockdown in England, 24th of March 2020. Just before my birthday as well. So when I submitted in February of 2020, there were a few different routes that you could submit via to gain professional chartership. The main one that people do is called the licentiate route. Try saying that with a lisp, it's not fun. The licentiate route. I was doing something called the associate route, and then there's also the experienced practitioner route. So I'll just break those down a little bit now. So like I say, when I sat this is how it was at the time. I believe, having a quick look on the RTPI website, things have actually changed a little bit now, but I'm going to leave a link down below for anyone who wants to explore a little bit further and see whether or not they are eligible for any of these routes. So when I was sitting this, the licentiate route was for those who had a degree and masters, or just a master's, basically 4 years of study that was RTPI accredited. You could then go onto the licentiate route, and you then had to enroll as a licentiate and do 2 years as a licentiate. So it's similar to the APC. You would enroll on it and then you do 2 years and then you submit. Now, because when I was sitting it, I've never done a master's degree. I only have an undergraduate degree, but it is an RTPI accredited degree. So what they introduced for people like me was the associate route. And this was where you could, if you had an RTPI accredited undergraduate degree but you hadn't done a master's, you could enroll as an associate and then submit an associate version of your RTPI after 2 years of being an associate. Then you pass that and then you submit your full version of your RTPI 2 years after becoming an associate. So it's a 4-year process as opposed to a 2 like the licentiate. Now this actually all worked out really well for me in terms of my career timeline, because my undergraduate role included a placement year working at Hounslow Council, and that was eligible for inclusion with my 2 years to become an associate. So I did a year at Hounslow Council and a year at Camden Council. So that was 2 years of relevant planning experience. And when I was coming to the end of my time at Camden Council, I mean, it was all sort of timing wise, it all worked out anyway. I was leaving the council to join my last job, which was at the NHS. And also my 2 years, I was now eligible to apply for the associate membership because my 2 years was up. So I was putting this application together as I was moving jobs, and the associate application was basically just a watered down version of the full chartership application. I believe I had to submit a PES, a smaller PDP for a 2-year period, and just one case study for the professional competence statement and no logbook. Now, I actually failed first time when I did my associate application. I don't have a lot of luck with these kinds of things. As you can, like I say, I think I've said it in a previous video, I'm not a naturally very academic person, as in the one who gets really high grades on exams and stuff. But I'm bloody persistent, I just keep trying. So I failed the first time round, and then in my job at the NHS, I submitted my resubmission, but I was supported far more at the NHS and I got it over the line and I became an associate. So once I was an associate, I then had to do my 2 years to become fully chartered, which worked in timeline with one of the other girls in my team who joined the NHS at the same time as me, and she was eligible for enrolment onto the licentiate route. So basically I'd done 2 years prior to that point than she had, but we were starting at the same place. So we then both started undertaking the 2 years that you had to do for chartership. Now, unlike the APC, it's not kind of a structured 2 years. They say 2 years because they think that that's sort of the amount of time that you need to get the relevant experience to pass. So you don't have to fill in your, I was going to say you don't have to fill in your logbook, but you absolutely do. Don't listen to me, fill in your logbook. You have to do a logbook when you're applying. And unlike the APC, this doesn't have to document what you're doing all the time. It's kind of just picking out key points. So what can be really useful is if you've got projects that you're working on that are quite long spanning, then just every time something happens on that, then you make a diary entry of it, or something particularly notable. But what they really like to see with the logbook is quite a lot of progression. So your early entries are going to be really basic things like, I undertook a site visit today, or I interpreted some plans to scale, and then you're working up to more complex, I contributed to the calculations of a SHLAA and things like that. That's what they want to be seeing in the progression over the period of time. So as I say, keep on top of your logbook, because that is the biggest piece of advice I would give anyone who is doing their RTPI. I've got a couple of friends who are doing theirs at the moment, and they are having to spend entire weekends of their lives going back through their emails they've sent over the last 2 years, trying to find things to put in their logbook. It's a pain, but Friday afternoon task is the perfect Friday afternoon task. Look back through what you've done over the week and put anything of note in your logbook. Your professional experience statement, as I say, this is just a padded out CV. There's loads of really good resources on the RTPI website. I have to say, the RTPI are really, really good. They really want people to pass this. They've got a lot of really detailed resources, and I would always go back to the resources that are on the website to help you with this. Now, the professional competence statement. Now, this is the tricky one, and this is what people often fall down on, is you have to meet the competencies through what you're writing, and it's a really unnatural style of writing. It's the same with the APC as well. It's a really unnatural style of writing because you're saying, I did this and I did that. As a result of the work that I did, this is what happened, and aren't I wonderful, and all of these things. But with the PCS, you also have to be putting in the words that they want to see from the competencies, but without making it too obvious. It's not a very good way of explaining myself. Hold on one moment. Okay, so I'm just looking at the competencies that need to be demonstrated through your PCS. And one of them, let's pick it out, spatial planning context. It's not enough just to write, I understood the spatial planning context. You have to be able to embed that within what it is you're talking about. You have to be able to demonstrate it without immediately sort of bold, underlined, here assessor, this is where I've done it kind of thing. You know, they need to be able to be convinced that you do this day in, day out, and you're not just using that buzzword for the sake of getting the pass mark. So it is quite a skill. It's a very specific way of writing. And if there is anyone around you who has done their Rtpi or any examples you can get access to, then I would highly recommend that, because I think that is where I fell down when I was doing my associate membership, is that in this country, certainly in London, I think outside of London it's a bit different, people are not encouraged to do it. There's not the time or the financial resource available for senior staff to support junior staff doing it. And, you know, think of that what you will. I'm not gonna lie, it's one of the reasons I decided to leave the council, is because I wasn't being supported and encouraged to progress. But that's a story for another day. But yeah, I would highly recommend trying to find an example of someone's and getting someone who has done it to read over your submission, because it is such a specific way of writing that you will never have done before and you will never have to do again. Once you pass it, it's done. So the final part of the submission is the professional development plan. And whilst I said everyone falls down on the PCS, I think I was lying. I think everyone falls down on the PDP. It's certainly where two of my colleagues have been referred previously. And again, it's all changed so much in the last couple of years, because I know traditionally when you were referred on your PDP, you were still allowed to pass, but you had to enter what was called the PDP support phase, and you had to submit your CPD for 2 years and then resubmit your PDP at the end of those 2 years. How many acronyms can I get into this video? It's like being back at the NHS all over again. Whereas now, I think that if you fail your PDP, you can still pass, and you just have to submit a PDP at the end of the 2 years. You don't have to do your CPD log as well, but I'm not 100% sure on that. I will check it and leave it below. But the PDP, don't underestimate it, which is what I did. This is why I failed my first one, was my PDP was not up to scratch. And it is, they will look at this and they will scrutinise this. And it's a very specific way of writing. You have to do a SWOT analysis of yourself and your job. So strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. And then you have to write out a detailed plan for 2 goals that you want to achieve over the period, and those goals are broken down into actions and tasks, and they need to be fully sort of time relevant. They need to be, what's the acronym everyone uses? It's STAR, isn't it? It's all completely gone out of my head, but you know the acronym that I'm talking about, and that's what they're looking for. They want to see that these are achievable, realistic, that's the R, realistic. They're achievable, they're realistic, and that you have a time frame in which to achieve this. So I think one of mine was, you have to keep them quite vaguely worded as well. One of mine was to progress in my, what was mine? It's something along the lines of, I would like to be promoted to a more senior position, and I'm going to undertake this by continuing to progress my knowledge and understanding of the town planning system in the UK. And this is going to be done by undertaking more complex development projects. This is going to be agreed because I have a meeting booked in on X date with the head of department, my manager, and the head of the development team. Boom, there is a tangible date in which I am going to sit down and agree to take on more complex projects, and the experience of doing these complex projects is going to progress my knowledge of the town planning system, which will then ultimately lead me to gaining promotion to a more senior role. And that's what they want to see. And you have to do about 2 or 3 of these per goal. So it's kind of using all of those buzzwords that they want to see, but also mixing it up. And it's so difficult to describe. The best advice I could give to anyone who wants to do it is to find an example. Now, the Rtpi do have examples on the website, so that's a great place to start. But please, please, please try and find someone who has done it and see theirs, because that is the best example you will see, especially if it's someone in the company where you do a similar kind of work. Then that's going to be the best you can get. I feel like this video has been all over the place, and half of it has been a comparison with the APC process, and half of it has been me going, oh, I think it's all changed since I did it. But basically, the Rtpi submission is just a written submission, but because it is just a written submission, do not underestimate it. It is just as, if not harder, than the RICS APC. It's completely worthwhile in my opinion. Like I say, I couldn't have got my senior job now that I have with the company I work at if I didn't have it. It was a humbling experience, because the first time around I did it, I thought that it was going to be a lot easier than it was. The same advice stands with the APC. Don't leave your logbook to the last minute. Keep doing your logbook little and often. And I think that Rtpi Chartership is a great thing to have. I think that it really does, it says quite a lot within the industry. I think if you work within town planning, people do notice it. I think the thing to note with the Rtpi is that once you've got it, you don't have to do anything other than pay your annual fee. Unlike with the RICS, where you have to submit your CPD record every year. I will caveat that with the Rtpi reserves the right to pick on anyone at random at any point during their career and say, oh, can you give us your CPD record and up-to-date professional development plan? Now, they give you about 2 weeks to do this because they know that people aren't keeping them up to date. But that, on average, that happens to people once in their career. I know one guy who it's happened to him twice. And I know several people who are sort of in their 50s or something who it's never happened to them. So it might happen, it might not. And like I say, they're generous, they give you 2 weeks to do it. So it's not an unreasonable task. And once you've passed the Rtpi, that's it. You just have to pay that £350 on the 1st of January. Why is it the 1st of January? Why do the Rtpi and the RICS think that the 1st of January is an appropriate date to ask for £500 in membership fees? It's disgusting. Fortunately, my employer pays mine, but again, this is a gripe with working at the council, is that they don't have the financial resource to pay the admission fees. So yeah, I think this video is all over the place. I really apologise for that. But basically, if you're a town planner, look at the websites I'm going to include in the description below, and I think it's worth doing the Rtpi, because if nothing else, once it's done, and no one's taking those letters off you after the end of your name, and they really can open doors for you. Thank you very much for watching this video. I quite liked this background. I think it's, especially with the little candle, it can be quite calming. I'm not sure if we'll keep it here, if we might mix it up every so often, but yeah, well, hopefully you're all sticking around, and then maybe in a couple of months there might be another 100 of you, and I haven't bored you all to death with my talk of the Rtpi and talking in acronyms. So thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.